background because I had to move my office to our bedroom, so because it was interfering with my kids trying to do their homework. It's kind of a mess.
That's why I'm at my office.
Smart.
Hey, Marie, will you check on YouTube? It says that we're streaming in about 1 second.
Okay, let me check. Oh, Yubi says, are we in the right link? Hold on, Yubi's texting me.
I could see that the stream is running on YouTube now.
You did?
Yes.
Thank you, Damon.
Will you make sure the audio works on that too, if you did check that? Sometimes it's kind of odd, or we want to make sure that people are actually not just seeing us, but they're listening to us.
Let's see what we got here.
Hold on, Yubi's texting me. Oh, there's a delay. Great. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes, there is audio on it. Hey, Brad, would you be willing to do the pledge for us? I got the prayer lined up, and my pledge plans didn't quite work out. Are you okay to do that?
Yep, that's great.
Thanks. All right. Well, we have we have everyone signed on, I think.
Yubi's not on yet. He's trying to get in still.
Okay.
Should we start recording?
We are, yes. I believe we are recording and we are live on YouTube. And so, let's try to help Yubi get on as we get rolling here, but let's go ahead and proceed with the meeting. Let's see, we will begin as our custom with an opening ceremony. I've asked if Brad Crookston would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Buzzy Mullikel will offer an opening prayer.
All right, everyone rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're good, right? Our Father in heaven, we humbly bow before thee tonight and give thanks for the opportunity we have to be here as a city council, and especially to express our gratitude for the residents that live in this city and for those that we serve. And we ask that you bless us tonight, that as we strive to make good decisions for the city, that we will remember those whom which we serve. And we ask you for a blessing upon our public health workers, that as they fight through this tough time, that they will be watched over, and for a special blessing upon so many who are afflicted by this current pandemic, that they will be strong and be able to understand that the end is near for vaccination and things will go well. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, thanks, Buzzy. Thank you, Brad. And we have the agenda before us. You have it there in your packets. And I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda with no adjustments.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion from Brad, second from Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then our agenda stands adopted. You have 2 sets of minutes from our previous city council meeting. Are there any changes or adjustments to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, Chair rules that the minutes stand adopted, and we'll go on and turn it over to Alan for our follow-up and action items.
Am I sharing my screen? If you can see my screen, maybe just give me a thumbs up or let me know. Okay, thank you. Looking at this, I'll go through these. Sorry, the action items compilation. Community center we'll talk about tonight. Emergency response plan. We've had a few EOC meetings. We'll have another one this next week. And we'll probably start having our meetings this next week or the following week, 2 weeks from now, over at the fire station. And we'll discuss some additions over there with CARES Act fund, probably a new screen so we can do some teleconferencing that'll just really help us in emergency response as well. And so we'll look to do that in the coming weeks. We have a meeting for website, a Zoom meeting tomorrow regarding the updates. And we'll go over HR Navigator in a minute. Water, in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably bring before the City Council a proposal for locations, future locations, kind of give a direction for reservoir and a new well. They've done a lot of modeling the past several months, and they've narrowed down 1 or 2 sites as the only real feasible sites in the city to do a new well and a new reservoir. So they'll bring that before the City Council for discussion at that point. As far as sewer goes, they are jetting hotspots. They are doing some inline work where they go and they repair some manholes that they found when they cameraed the entire system. They repair it from inside the sewer with chemicals and with some concrete type substance that fills some gaps. And so they're doing that right now throughout the city. Streets, they are prepping for plowing. They did some plowing this last week, spreading salt. And so they're prepared for this winter. The big thing that they're working on is 3100 North. And I can probably just give a quick update on 3100 North. The engineer, the contractor, everyone, they came up with a pretty ingenious idea. What they did is they waited for a day that hit 50 degrees, and they ended up paving 2 inches to 2.5 inches of asphalt all the way from 12th East up to about 1400 East. And then they'll do a little bit more tomorrow that'll take it to the east side of the furthest east resident, but it won't go from there all the way up to 16th East at that time. So the road will actually just get the residents along 3100 North access at that time. They're still 6 months or 7 months ahead of schedule, but what that does is over the winter, they'll drive on that 2 inches, 2.5 inches of asphalt, which ironically is what all of our older roads have on them. But then they'll see if there's any places that they have to repair in the spring, and then they'll do a lift on top of all of it, another 2 inches of asphalt. So they'll bring us to the 4.5 inches that are already lined up to be paved on that road, and it'll turn out really well at that point. So hats off to them for coming up with that idea and that plan, and for getting that paving down for all of those residents there so they have clean access to their homes, or safe access over the winter. Jumping down through here, stormwater, they Will Morris that we talked about last week, he's been really updating all of our stormwater system. It's been great having him on the staff, and he's really brought things up to date. Engineering, like I mentioned, 3100 North is a huge priority, and 300 East, the CBDG grant that we've talked about, getting that lined up. Parks, one of the major things they're doing right now is they're going to reinstall the second the storage tank at the splash pad. They're working with Lance on that and the Bear River Health Department to install that tank over the winter so that they can be up and running this next year. As a correction they had to do. Looking at trails, they're just doing some grass control. Right now we're really doing some administrative work. We're trying to get in touch with several people that have land along trails throughout the city, and we're negotiating with them, working with them to see if there's things that we can do, mainly along the middle canal right now. Recreation, they're on hold. They've been suspended for 2 weeks while the transmission index was really high and in accordance with the governor's and the health department's mandate and health order, but they are putting together their plans for how to safely run a recreation program, a basketball program. We have over 600 or 700 people that participate in basketball each year. So they're trying to find safe ways to do that over the winter. And they have some other programs coming up related to Silent Santa for persons with disabilities. and also the Christmas lighting contest. So they're still trying to do socially distanced and other programs in the next couple of weeks. Facilities, they're doing a lot of stuff with CARES Act funds. Cemetery, we did open up phase 2 of the cemetery last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. And we had 80 people the first day come in, or 80 plots sold that first day, which was great. I mean, the second phase was really needed at that time. I think we only have about 10 or 12 plots total in phase 1 that are still available for purchase. We've already had our first burial in phase 2 of the cemetery. And so things are moving forward with that, and we're glad to have that resource available at that time. We'll talk about CRAs this evening. Economic development, the master plan is still in works right now, and we will talk about the CRA. That's the major component tonight. And just jumping down through here, the disproportionate business license fee, we're still working on that. More education, we still have 1 or 2 months of education because it's compounded quarterly. So we'll let people, their first bill would come out in January, or they'd receive it in January for October, November, December, but we're still sending education letters every month to each of the businesses that may have a bill coming up to let them know. Human resources, we are working with HR Navigator to get everything online. Karen's been working on that, and it's been coming along great. And then it'll be the end of the year reporting for her. Tonight we'll talk about the audit with the recorder. The library has a number of things coming up and going on. They'll have the writing contest, which will be in January. And then they're doing a number of charities and other smaller programs that they're working on right now. Again, trying to be socially distanced. Police, we'll probably go over a few things later tonight. Chief can give us a few updates. The Danes residents, we are working with them. They have submitted or filed building permits to actually do some repair work on there, but we'll have to see in the coming weeks if they actually do the repairs that they've submitted and filed on. And then fire department, they've done, they're doing some modifications over at the fire department to kind of a workout room, but we're trying to use CARES Act money to make the communication over there with the screens and having screens in each of the bays that has the CAD data on it so that they can see what they're responding to while they're out in the base. So we've been working well, or the chief's been working well on that. They've also helped us out with some rapid tests. So hats off to the fire department there as well. That's a lengthy overview of the action items right now. I skipped over a number of items. If there are questions though.
Any questions from the council? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to our Employee Leadership Award. This week, our recognition is for Dathan Robinson. Dathan works in the streets department and does a great job. He's very good at working with others and has taken on the role of being a team leader, doing especially a lot of work on asphalt jobs. 3100 has been a tremendous amount of work, and he's been great in working with us on that. We've had a lot of transition with a department head changeover in the streets department, and Dathan has just always stepped up and been willing to do whatever he's been asked to do, and just been a model employee, does it with a good sense of humor, and just helps to make a pleasant and positive work environment. So please join me in applauding Dathan for his work on behalf of the city. Sorry, it's a little underwhelming if my clapping is the only clapping you hear. I should have done it a little louder, but we'll get a gift card out to Dathan to recognize him for his excellent efforts on behalf of the city. Okay, with that, we can go on to our action items, and Diana Cannell is here from Allred Jackson to present our audit report. Diana, take it away.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to meet with you virtually today And I'd really like to say thanks to Alan and to Scott and everybody who helped us complete the audit this year. It takes a lot of effort, and we really appreciate all the help that they are and how responsive they are to us. So I just kind of want to give you a real broad overview of your financial statements. Just a couple of the highlights. Ask any questions at any time. Alan, if you want to put it, you can just put it on page 17. But I'm really not going to dig into the numbers. If you have questions specifically on anything in the audit report, council, get a hold of me anytime. I'm happy to sit down with you one-on-one or answer any questions that you have. I know it's a lot of information, so happy to do that throughout the year or right after this meeting or whatever you would like. But if you look there at this schedule shows all of the assets that the city has, and you can see your ending position was 42 million at the end of the year, and that's all funds all together. So it's about a $4 million increase from last year. So I wanted to let you know what really made up that $4 million increase in our assets, what contributed to that. A big part of that is you had some additional revenues this year that you haven't had in the past. For example, you had a new local transit tax that you haven't had before. That's brand new. You received some CARES Act funding that you haven't had before that wasn't fully expended by the end of the year. That increased your cash position. You also had increases in sales tax this year, as well as each of your funds that provide water, sewer, stormwater. All of them had increases over last year on revenues that you brought in. That's attributed to number of users have increased. You guys have been in a period of growth for multiple years, and you're seeing that come through on those areas as well. Now, with that, you also had some increases in expenses. For example, there was the CMPO pass-through. Now, that's not cash you physically received and then spent out, but you're required to show that revenue and the expense that went towards that project, and that was about $556,000. Other than that, your expenses were pretty, about $1 million increase over the year between all the funds. So looking at where did you end up with all your funds, your net income, so to speak, for each of the funds was positive, except for the library fund, which had a very, very minor net loss of about $9,000 for the year. So as you look at those, keep in mind that some things run through those funds. For example, if you're looking water and sewer and stormwater, are the fees that you're charging, are they enough to support the activities that you're using in those funds? And so one, if you have a positive net income, that's a good indicator that the fees that you're set are supporting what you're doing. However, I remind all of my cities this: if you are planning any large projects, keep in mind that if you're not wanting to take out debt for those projects, save and build up any excess funds that you have, like in a year like this year, so that when those items come, that you can support those without having to increase fees as much or at all, without having to go into debt. So good indicators across the board for all of your funds. Net effect, your income, or sorry, your equity went up about $3.8 million over the year. As I looked at your debt, it only increased about $31,000. You have very little debt on the books. You pulled in 5 new capital leases. You paid off some capital leases during the year. Net effect, $31,000 increase in debt, very minor. Your fixed assets increased $1.2 million. So you upped your assets by a net amount of $1.2 million and only increased your debt by $31,000. So that's very positive indicator of what you're doing with your money management. So that is your finances on a very, very high level. Do you want to talk about anything more in depth or have any specific questions related to finances before I go into there's one finding this year?
Let's go ahead and take a look at the finding.
Okay, only one finding. And first of all, I just want to say no findings on state compliance, which is amazing, because not only do they have all the compliance items that we've had to do in the past. They throw on some new ones, including the fraud risk assessment that was presented to the council earlier. So they had, and some additional cash management items that we had to go in and test this year. No findings with state compliance. So I really want to say great job, because that goes from everything from posting your agendas and approval of minutes, all the way to not exceeding your budgets in any of your funds. So great job. The only finding that we had was on audit adjustments. When we come in to do the audit, if we find some things that need to be adjusted, and if it's a large enough amount, then we report that to you. And this is what this finding is. I've already talked to Scott and gone through individually what things he can do to fix for next year. I think it will be fully resolved. So not super concerned that I think action's already being taken now to make sure that this will be taken care of in the future. So any questions on the finding? Or any questions on anything?
Anyone have anything for Diana? Usually at this point, everybody's chewing on some sort of chocolate or something.
I know. I dropped the chocolates off to the office, your office today. So if you sneak in there, grab a chocolate as you're reading through the audit report.
Everyone, please do drop by and enjoy a piece of chocolate. But if there's no questions, I will just say thank you, Diana, and spread a few thanks around. Diana really does a great job she comes in independently and looks at this and wants to make sure that we're operating in an appropriate way. She's, I think, particularly invested in us. I know she takes good care of all of her cities, but she is a North Logan resident. And so she's always been wonderfully helpful. The other thing I want to point out is a couple of years ago, when this council was early on, we had a pretty rough audit with a number of significant findings, both in terms of accounting practices and in terms of state compliance. Mm-hmm. And I want to acknowledge the hard work that a lot of people have put in to get us to this kind of an outcome where we have no findings on state compliance. Alan, Marie, Scott, a lot of folks in the city office working to make this happen effectively. And then also as well in terms of, having our rates set well and effectively. We'd been in the hole for some time on sewer, no pun intended. And on those fronts, it's good public policy being set by the city council. And so kudos to you all as well. I'm just really, really pleased with what this shows for where we're at as a city and the things we've been able to accomplish in the last several years. Thank you, Diana.
Well said, Mayor. Well said.
Awesome. And any other questions on the audit? All right. Then we'll move on from the audit. Diana, I know you love city council meetings and probably want to hang out with us the rest of the night, which you're welcome to do, but you're also excused if you wish to sign off at this point in time. At this point, I would entertain a motion from the council to convene in our role as the North Logan City Redevelopment Agency, if someone would make such a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion from Bruce, second from Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair rules that was unanimous. I couldn't hear everybody, but stop me if it wasn't. And we are now in session as the North Logan Redevelopment Agency. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Bruce, second from Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Our one item of business in this session, or excuse me, our business in this session is to go over. Oh gosh, I didn't look up my agenda because Alan had it up on the screen and now it's gone. There we go. We have to talk about resolution initiating the process of adopting one or more CRA area plans. Alan, will you take us through that?
Yes, I could introduce it briefly. What you're looking at is this is one of the first of many processes going through the development of a new RDA or a CRA, a community reinvestment area, is what we're looking at. As a staff, we've been working on this, and the person that's been guiding us through the process is actually Cody Dieter. Cody is in this meeting right now. At least I saw him earlier. But we'll probably turn some time over to him. He has a little presentation that kind of walks us through where we are right now. And we can look at the actual resolution after that we'll have to adopt in order to move forward with this CRA process. Cody, are you there in the meeting?
Yes, I'm here, Alan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I'm here.
Go ahead, Cody.
Excellent. Do you want to pull up that presentation, Alan? So just as some background, I've been working in the economic development and local government finance industry for nearly 20 years. And so I've created, I don't know how many, 20 of these project areas, something like that. So what I thought we would do tonight is just talk about an overview. Some of you probably have a deeper depth of knowledge on what a redevelopment agency is and what a project area is, and some may have less knowledge. And so I thought it'd be helpful in talking with Alan to review what a project area is and what the RDA is as well. So let's go through that, Alan. So today, I just want to share five things. What is a CRA and an RDA? What do those acronyms stand for? How do these entities work? How can tax increment be used? What is tax increment? How can it be used? And then what is the timeline for creating a new project area? And then we'll talk about the specific project area that you're looking at today. So the RDA is short for redevelopment agency. It is a separate legal entity that's created by the city. This statute has changed probably every other year. And so some of these terms have changed. If you did not have a redevelopment agency in the city and wanted to create one, it would now be called a community reinvestment agency. But since you had one already in place, it's a redevelopment agency. And the board of the RDA is the city council. So right now you're sitting as a board, have a different hat on. The purpose of the redevelopment agency is to focus directly on economic development. An RDA, that's its sole purpose. And creating project areas and using property tax that's generated within those project areas is the primary tool of a CRA or the RDA. And so that's the tool you use when you want to incentivize businesses. So how does tax increment work? As the name implies, it's incremental taxes that are generated from development. So the RDA creates a project area, a community reinvestment project area, a geographic boundary within the city that you then take the incremental tax benefit that occurs and reinvest that. So the best way to look at that is if you on the chart to the right, assume that there's $1 million of value. That's the blue line. That's your base tax year, and you create a project area, and this project area in a private entity invests $10 million into the project area. So now you've got $11 million worth of value. That base year value of $1 million, all the current taxing entities who levy a tax in the area will continue to receive the same taxes they have always received. And then this additional 10 million of value, 75% of that, that's the standard in the industry. It can go up or down, but assuming in this scenario, 75% of those taxes are then redirected through the CRA to the redevelopment agency and used for a variety of purposes to promote economic development. And then the 25% of new taxes would then flow directly to all of the taxing entities, so they do see a benefit right away. And then once the project area expires, in this example in year 20, then all of that new value flows to all the taxing entities. So it's just a way of encouraging tax increment, a way of encouraging economic development for a period of time. So that's an example of how one of these projects works. So the next question is, how can tax increment be used? There's a fairly broad leeway in the statute on how tax increment can be used. The first four of the primary ways in which tax increment is used: reimburse development costs. So this would be, a private developer coming in and making improvements, either horizontal infrastructure or vertical infrastructure, and you simply reimburse those over some period of time. The RDA also has the ability to buy or buy down land. This has occurred in some cases where it helps the developer to get into an area if you buy the land or reduce the cost by buying it down. You can provide a direct development incentive. This is often used where you want to incentivize someone to come in, and you don't necessarily care how they use the increment. You just want to incentivize them to come in. And so you provide them a direct incentive. And often that's tied to development standards. So you may say you have to invest a certain amount into the project, or you need to generate a certain amount of jobs that are above the median income level of Cache County. Another common use is public infrastructure. So if you needed to build roads or sewer, water, sidewalk, any of those types of infrastructure, rather than the developer doing that, you could do that as a city and reimburse yourself or the developer through the RDA. The one thing you cannot do is pay for public buildings. So you couldn't try to build a fire station or a city hall with a tax increment. So that's something you could not do. So let's talk now about the approval process. So this is what you'll be doing tonight. The first step, you adopt a survey resolution which defines the boundaries and the parcels that will be included in the project area. And this resolution also authorizes staff and consultants to draft a project area plan and a project area budget. The project area plan defines what it is you're trying to accomplish. What type of development are we seeking after? Is it job growth? Is it rehabbing an old building and retrofitting it to something else? This is what the plan will describe. And there's also very specific statutory requirements about how it impacts current streets and those who live in the project area. So those elements will be included. And then of course the budget. What type of tax increment might flow off of this project area, and how would we as a city or as the RDA choose to spend that money? Once that project area plan and budget are drafted, then the board will review that document and set a public hearing, that which will be noticed 30 days in advance to the public as well as the property owners who are in the project area. And these documents will be available for public inspection. Then once that public hearing is held, you can adopt those plans and budgets as a formal plan and budget for the area. And then the next major step, and the most critical, is negotiating interlocal agreements with each of the taxing entities. So this is where we would meet with the school district, the county, and the other smaller taxing entities, and individually enter into interlocal agreements where they would deliver funds to the project and agree with the uses of those funds. And then the final step is to determine, well, then how are we going to spend those funds? And you would negotiate either a participation agreement with the developer or the landowners. That could be specific to each development or each parcel, or you could develop a program whereby people could come forward and apply for those funds for specific purposes that we outlined in the plan. This process usually takes 60 to 180 days, and I put in parentheses or more because the longest and most challenging portion is the interlocal agreement negotiations with all of the taxing entities. And the most challenging one is the school district, simply because members of the school board did not become elected to worry about economic development. They maybe should think about that, but it's one of those where it's not the primary thought on their mind, and it does take some negotiation to make sure that we provide something that's a benefit to them and that they feel comfortable with that process. So that's the approval process. And we can now talk about the specific project area that that the city is considering, or the RDA is considering. These 4 quadrants, Alan and staff have identified and will be outlined in your economic development plan, which I think is a great connection between a vision document, which is your economic development plan, and your practical implementation. So each of these 4 areas, you can see it, the green parcels, or the green and purple parcels, are those which are identified as being a part of the project area, and in which we would try to incentivize development. And each of the quadrants have a different focus. So for example, manufacturing and commercial is more focused on, job creation, some of that high-tech industry. The North Main Street is more Main Street retail, Main Street job creation. South Main Street is kind of rehabilitating some older abandoned buildings, like the Kmart, for example. And then your city centers has a more mixed use component with office and maybe some livable space above it. So each of these areas will have more definition in the project area plan that we can describe, and then it'll link right back to your economic development plan, which is really a great way of doing it. And so the next page is just talking about the calendar of events. We can get into all of the steps, but the major steps are, just having this survey resolution drafted and approved. We'll draft the plan and budget over the next month. We'll bring that back to you in your December meeting, December 16th meeting, assuming we're all comfortable with it, with Alan and his staff. And then you can review that as the council or the board. And if it's in good enough shape, we can then set a public hearing for 30 days out. So it'd be the January 20th meeting. We could hold a public hearing and then start negotiations with all of the taxing entities and get their feedback on their desire to be a part of this project. So that is, in a nutshell, CRAs and RDAs, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this process.
Any questions for Cody?
I don't know if I dazzle you with my brilliance or if I baffled you. So if there's no questions, I'll just smile. Hope for the best.
That was a very clear presentation, and I really am, the timeline was also very helpful. We've been kind of looking and talking and discussing on this front, and I'm really excited about the aggressive timeline you've been able to lay out here for us. That has a lot of benefits for some things we're working on and hoping to achieve as a city.
Understood.
So any questions, or we'll just see Cody back in a few weeks and work on that from there. All right, hearing no questions, I'll just go ahead and say once again, Cody, thank you for your participation. Do we need this resolution passed tonight then, Alan, to move forward?
Yes, and Cody can probably fill in the blanks here, but this is the you're basically adopting the survey area, or the area that was in one of the slides. So these are all the designated areas of the proposed CRA. They include some of our existing, but mostly the proposed areas for this new CRA. That is the first step in the process, and it has to be done by resolution by the RDA. So yes, it's very brief, but this is the one thing we do need approved before we can move forward.
In that case, council or redevelopment agency, I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Motion from Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Chair rules that everyone's lips moved when I called for the ayes and that it passed unanimously. So that motion carries. Thank you again, Cody. Next, we have a little bit of discussion on an agreement with the Four Seasons and the Wasatch Properties Group that involves the redevelopment agency. Alan, do you want to talk through the circumstances here?
Yeah, I can give a brief overview. I do need to preface this with we've had some emails going back and forth between us and Wasatch and also our city attorney. And I would encourage you basically not to bring this to a vote this evening. We do need some final T's crossed, I's dotted before we can fully approve this. But the gist of this agreement is basically related to the original development agreement regarding Four Seasons South. So Four Seasons South came in, there was an agreement which included some RDA money or tax increment funds. And at that time, it's basically just summarized right here. There was an estimate within that original agreement that said that the tax increment would be around $114,000. It's really tough to estimate how much that increment is going to be, but they took a stab at it and it's 114. The actual increment we're seeing is around 64,000. The other thing that they put into the original agreement is that it would start in 2014 or 15 when the actual increment didn't start until this year. Basically 2019 is when the increment started. And what that does is it, in all the negotiations and all the discussions, it leaves the city about a few $100,000 short in meeting kind of the spirit of the intent to get to a certain amount within the agreement. And so what this amendment to the agreement is attempting to do is to basically say, instead of all of the dollar amounts and everything else, it's basically saying we're going to propose that full increment amount, that 60, what was that? It'll be, this is again just an estimate, but again, we're not going to take a dollar amount, we're just going to do a percentage. And so it's the 100% of that tax increment would go back to the Four Seasons South, along with the live work units, which would be individually taxed. So their property tax would come back, and 100% of what North Logan receives would go back to that entity. And then two other kind of unique aspects to this is that the Four Seasons existing tax increment fund, so the original Four Seasons that was approved in 2008, that agreement will be fulfilled this next year, meaning that $1 million in tax increment fund will be completed. And one idea is to take the remaining 4 to 5 years that's in the CDA and use those funds to see how much closer we can get to that original intended amount. All of this is just a good faith effort to see if we can get closer to the original amount. And then the other item that we talked about is a future community reinvestment area. What that is you saw that tonight. It's in the Four Seasons South is in a community reinvestment area right now. And we're going to request from the school district and all the other entities that Cody referenced there that they become part of another CRA or a new CRA or an RDA. and that they would receive that increment. While I don't think that we'll ever fully realize and meet that spirit or the original intent of the agreement, just because of the 4 or 5 years that it's behind before our CDA expires. I do think this agreement gets us closer to that original intent. However, like I mentioned before, there's some things here that we probably do need to take back, modify a tiny bit before we bring it back before the city council. But we'll probably turn over to the mayor and the city council to basically, if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, and then as we take it back to the city attorney and also to Wasatch, to see what their feedback will be before the next meeting.
As I would just summarize this as saying that the original agreement wasn't written as clearly as perhaps it should have been in terms of how the money was going to be paid out, generated a lot of different expectations, and there are some things that I wish we'd done differently there. But in short, one party of Wasatch felt like they were promised a certain amount of money. The city feels like we had promised some percentages with amounts of money given as an example. And we just, the best resolution seems to me like we do whatever we can with some of these clever and creative things that Alan has pointed out here to try to get as close as we can to what the overall intent of the original agreement was. And I think if we do that, we can satisfy both parties. And questions from the council or development agency on this item? Things you'd like to understand better? I think we've got a good general framework here. If you have questions or concerns or objections to this, please get with Alan or with myself quickly. But I think we'll pursue the general framework, and then there's a few tweaks in terms of kind of language that Seth has recommended and that Alan and I have talked through as well to make sure intent is really clear in this agreement. And then we'll be ready to move forward, maybe bring this back in December or possibly January if it takes a little longer. If there's no other redevelopment business, I'd entertain a motion to leave session as the redevelopment agency and reconvene in city council session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we are back in regular council.
You know what? I couldn't tell who made those motions.
It was Bruce making the original motion and Brad made the second.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Sorry, I usually try to call that out just to make sure.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
Okay, next is updates regarding discussion of the library and community center. I'll just kind of, kick this off a little bit. This is a concept that's been kicking around for quite a few years. We know we have some issues and limitations with our facilities at the library. We want to see this as we see the potential for this being a trip generator for economic development, and a lot of good concepts here, but it's also a fairly expensive proposition. Tied potentially into this is the ability to use, if we built a new facility, to use the old library building as city offices, because we could reconfigure that, and I've actually got some plans sketched out for what that might look like. But wanted to, we'll have Alan just do a little bit of presentation here, because we do need to get a little bit of council feedback on exactly how to move forward on this. So Alan, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, if you can all see my screen, we've gone through this before, but I'll just give a very brief background. I think the entire council, we've sat down and gone through aspects of this. This is several years in the making, but just a brief background. The mayor already spoke about this. It came about as an economic discussion for the city center area. And we talked about a library, children's museum, a large community center, which is a huge room within that can be pretty versatile. And then the Village Green, which has kind of been the name of the open space, the park in quotation marks in the city center that would tie to this center. And then as we've gone through this, we reached out to the community. We did a survey with the North Logan City residents, and then the county did a survey about a museum component or an educational museum, children's museum aspect across the county. Both of them came back very positive. I mean, in the 80% range of strongly supportive for those types of facilities. And so when we started looking at this, we thought, you know what, we need to look at this from, can this be a type of facility we could put in without burdening the public with an increased tax or an additional tax or something along those lines? And then there's donations that have been brought to the board, a $3 million donation, and even more on top of that. A lot of these things, though, are already existing or additional donations that could take place, especially advertising-based donations based off of the rooms of this facility. Or if we do a children's museum component, they would advertise the actual exhibit or area of that facility. So looking at all this, we've gone over this. There's RAPS potential because there is countywide support. Community impact fee board, that is the monies that are generated by mineral leases throughout the state, but they provide loans at lower interest rates along the 1.5 to 2.5 at the most interest rates, and they go to 30 years as opposed to 20 years. And then also the redevelopment agency funds that we just talked about. So as you go, we're basically, though, at a crossroads. We pumped the brakes on this project several times for good reasons. But right now we're at a crossroads, and that big question came up probably this last year, and that is, do we go forward with the city center area and explore that for the library, community center, large room, and then potentially even a children's museum? Or do we expand the existing library with the same funds on that site? And so that's where we are. We need to know the direction there because we need to know which way to go and expend our efforts in putting together this facility. These next slides, you've all seen them. This is the option for going in the city center area. So the area by Maple Springs, east of the Four Seasons. These are some of the designs that they put together. They have a library and a museum and a community center in between both of those, which is the large room. This is just a rendering of the exterior. This you may have not seen. If we do the library in the community center in the city center, there's the option to remodel the library itself to create a city office. So as you're looking at this design right here, and we won't go in depth into this, was a quick mock-up that was prepared for what the library could look like, the existing library right now as a city office. And when I first heard of this idea, I was pretty much in the boat of saying absolutely not. But after I saw this design, it actually functions really well as a city office potentially. But this was just one thought. If we do have the library and community center in the city center, we would retrofit the existing library to become the city office for the next 30 to 40 years. But just jumping ahead, the other option, and so we've talked about the city center option. Option 2 is just to expand the existing library, to take $3 million in donations and expand the existing library. And sorry, I don't have beautiful designs here, but basically what you do is you take the existing library, expand the library or the media portion into the council room, which is on that east side. And then you would add a community center component, which is like a very large meeting room that would be paid for through that donation. And that would be used for endless programming, endless community events, senior senior center, basically, is what it would be, an aspect of that. And then the only other question that comes up, though, with this option, with option 2, is where the heck does a city office come from? So we wouldn't really have the money at that point to do a city office or to build a new building down here at what's commonly known as the Civic Center. But if you look at this, I'll just skip through these really quick. If you look at the city center option, so if this goes down in the city center, which I believe everyone knows where that's at, it does a major benefit to that area. It becomes the economic anchor for that area, kind of a timeless aspect. There are funding options, the CIB loans, the RDA monies, the sponsorships, and then we get a new city office. Those are the huge components that are positive. By retrofitting the existing library into a new city office, we kill 2 birds with 1 stone at that point. And then just the quality. The cons, it's expensive. I mean, we're looking at $10 million there to put that in. Again, we've had costs everywhere from 10 million to 26 million for this facility. But as you go through these, those are the negatives for the city center area. We do have to go into debt with a CIB loan. As Diana pointed out, we basically have little to no debt right now. Very unique for a city to be in that boat. But we probably will in the coming years. We are going to have to bond for our water improvements. However small that bond is, we will have to bond for that. And then obviously this would be another option for bonding. Existing library conversion. So if we did option 2, here's the pros and cons. It's shovel ready. We could use that 3 million and just start right now, and expand and have a gigantic community center wing to the library. Probably retrofit the inside of the library a little bit too, so we don't have the worst heating and cooling system in the world. That would be a number 1 option. Sorry, it's probably not on here. There it is. Sorry. But we would have to go through that. The cons, we don't have another option for a new city office, meaning with the amount of money and excess funds we have in our general fund, meaning we don't have any excess funds in our general fund. We wouldn't have a new city office for years. And it wouldn't be as high of a quality. It wouldn't be that eye-catching wow factor for this library, although it could be very nice and serve a very valuable purpose. Anyway, but jumping ahead, that's what we're here to do tonight, is to look at what direction do we go? Do we decide on designs? Keeping in mind, no matter what we do, the key to funding for these facilities, for grants, for our endowments, for everything going forward, is programming. So having that community center, which is like a large cultural hall within this building, to have conferences, to have daily programming, monthly programming for all ages, a senior component to that, for community events. That is the big question. So which of those 2 options, or any other options, satisfies those needs going forward? Because that's going to be the key. So I basically, we've gone over all of these items in the past. They may not be as applicable now because we're hopefully on the tail end of COVID. I would hope by this next spring, summer, we're seeing the economy somewhat hold course, or maybe increase slightly, and hopefully it continues to increase to the point where people would be more willing to donate. That's the one area where we're kind of hesitant. However, CIB loan rates are very low right now, and that's a huge positive. So, sorry, I didn't want to go over all of this. We've gone over this in the past, and the mayor can probably provide a little bit more clarity. But I wanted to get your feedback as to your thoughts about which direction do we start pushing? Which direction do we start talking with entities regarding moving forward? So with that, I'll probably turn it back over to the mayor and say, Mayor, what are the additional thoughts do you have?
There's just one other thing that I want to share with the council as we kind of have this discussion. And that is, when we originally looked at this with our previous architecture firm, we laid out and went through several processes, lots of visioning, engagement around the city and the county. And they said, we can give you everything you want. It's just going to cost $26 million in terms of a library, community center, and children's museum. And as you know, some people got quiet in the room and looked nervous. And I just said, look, as the elected official in the room, I'll be the wet blanket. That's too much money, and we can't afford a $26 million facility. So they worked to try to bring some things back. But basically, the Children's Museum runs about $500 to $600 per square foot of finished space. It's really expensive in the way that it had been conceived there. And so the kind of the direction we had gone as we've been thinking and having some conversations at the staff level had been, maybe we need to do a library and community center, but scratch the Children's Museum and look at either a brand new facility that houses both of those functions in the city center, or do that expansion on our existing campus, essentially add on maybe some library space as well as some community center space. And we met with a contractor who's a friend of the city, who's built a number of projects here, and just said, hey, you're willing to let us pick your brain a little bit on some of these costs. And he threw out an idea that we had not really considered previously, and that was that if we used steel construction technologies as opposed to conventional or traditional building technologies, that we could actually get our cost per square foot down enough that in a new facility, we could have the square footage space to still do a children's museum and to stay within a budget of probably $11 to $13 million, which was kind of our high end when we initially looked at this. And another concept is to just build the shell initially that gives us space when it's easy for us to do that, allow some possibilities for expansion into the future. And then we can figure out, we certainly plan for the community center, and then we can work on building out Children's Museum over time in ways that might be more cost effective than just building the Children's Museum from scratch. Lose probably some things in terms of having a fixed space that we're dealing with rather than planning the space for the Children's Museum. But it also allows us to build in phases and have some efficiencies. So that does bring a modest, right? We're not going to be building, something quite on the scale of the Museum of Natural Curiosity, maybe not even the Treehouse Museum, but using maybe more of the St. George Children's Museum as kind of a model for what kind of thing we'd be able to accomplish here. And that could be back on the table if we went to a steel construction option. So just want to open it up and get some feedback from you guys, get some questions. There's still some things, some cost estimating and very rough estimating, and some of those kinds of things that we need to tie up. But we're interested in your impressions on how to move forward. And there's a part of me that's, being able to just push the go button on renovating the existing facility and expanding it is very attractive to me. But I'm also somewhat worried that by the time we renovate the existing facility and build a new city office, we probably end up spending nearly as much money, probably not quite, but we might spend nearly as much money and not end up with as good of a project. But from a financial position, the advantage is that we can wait on the city office in theory for a little bit longer and have a little more time to try to solve those the financial end of that equation. So with that, Council, what's your thoughts?
I had a couple of thoughts or questions, I guess. Do we have an estimate on what a new city office would cost? Was one question. I didn't know if we had that. And then when we're talking about the city center, we're kind of talking about, the new facility in the city center. We're talking about putting in a pretty grand facility in there. Would we entertain the possibility of doing more of what we have, not obviously not the same thing, but more of a library, that what we have with a community center attached to it without the children's museum? And what would that model look like? Because it seems like building the library would be a similar cost to building a city office. Sorry for kids screaming in the background, but you can't hear them. But anyways, that was some of my thoughts. Is there a possibility of sticking with maybe more library, community center, and the possibility of expansion in the future onto that facility, putting it in the actual city center, and then renovating the existing library? Does that make sense, what I'm kind of asking?
I think so. So what you're saying is, what would the cost be to just do a library and community center, no children's museum in the city center area? And then, so if we were to do that, our costs could come down. I think we'd be looking at that facility if we did a traditional construction, like if we just zapped the children's museum out of the previous plans. I can't remember what the breakdown was, and Alan, you might have that in front of you, but my hunch is that still puts us more in, that puts us in kind of a 6, 7, maybe even 6 or 7 million area, maybe even 8. A lot of the site work is going to be similarly, it will be similar. Same with the roads and streets, curb, gutter, sidewalk, those kinds of things. If we build anything there, then those things are just going to be fixed costs. But the children's museum, I don't know how the concept of using kind of a steel construction as the base would affect that. Amping up the square footage with steel construction is actually very, very inexpensive, because it's just another set of steel beams that frames out the extra space. And so that's doesn't dramatically increase our costs, but could be something that we could look at and try to price out. It's the finished, the finishing of the children's museum that gets expensive, and so, well, yeah, I don't know. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that helps answer it. I mean, definitely there's a lot to be said for, there's definitely gonna be a lot of money in finishing it. I'm, fairly versed in construction and spend a lot of time in it. But I guess I'm even the $10 million price tag looks pretty daunting to me, and to go into debt for a children's museum or whatever, when we have pretty serious infrastructure needs, water and sewer and lots of other infrastructure within the city. I struggle with the concept of spending, taking out, borrowing the money to do this facility, especially to that kind of degree where we're, it's pretty significant in my mind, and excessive to go build a 10 plus. And we know from previous projects that, I don't know when we got that $10 million estimate, but construction costs are up significantly right now from what they were this spring. So my guess is if that was done early this spring, that cost estimate would go up fairly significantly right now.
Yeah, Brad brings up some really good points. One with construction costs. Two with, do we want to assume this type of debt? I mean, that's the other big component of that. My answer to do we assume that type of debt would just be an opinion, and it would be only if we can pay for it through those donations, through the endowment and things of that nature, to pay off that loan from the CIB. We would have to really do our homework to get it to the point where we would not be talking about any taxes or additional taxes going towards this in order to make it work. That's why the city center area, we could use RDA monies for site improvements around the entire site to lower the costs in that element and to do the utility work. But then, like the mayor said, we should really explore every option, from using the steel building, the shell, and then as far as pinning down exactly what we want as far as a library and community center. And then does that even include a children's museum component? Only if there are donations lined up for any aspect of a children's museum, is my opinion, to cover a lot of those costs, and also user fees to cover those costs. Or do you just tie in some STEM related educational aspects to the library itself? Like Brad was talking about, just a community center and a library at that point. You're still checking off the huge aspect there. Brad also asked what it would cost to build a building now, and I could give you an old estimate. The old estimate was around 2 to 3 million, but as Brad's brought up, it's probably more, on 3.5 million at this point, just to build a city office that would be adequate for the next 20 to 30 years at that point, to get our money's worth. But I'm probably just stating what's already been stated within this meeting, so I don't want to belabor that anymore. But Brad brings up really good points about cost, about what are we willing to assume at that point with this.
I assume we're just looking for some quick feedback, and we're not trying to solve the problem tonight. So I'll give a couple of quick thoughts. Like Brad, I'm not sold. I don't think Brad doesn't sound like he's sold on the Children's Museum. I likewise am not sold on it. I'm not against it. I just don't see, I don't see the benefit of it, right? Not the benefit, but I don't see the need for it, or the need for spending that much money for that. I look at the library we have now, and I'm still struggling a little bit, thinking that building's not that old and it's not in that bad a shape, and we could fix the HVAC. And that the building still has a lot of use left with it. So I like the expansion idea. I don't, for my personal feeling is, I'm not sure that it needs to go in the city center anyway. I wonder if there's something better we can do there. I think about cities and in terms of whether or not a city office building is a draw for economic development. And I can't think of a city where I go to the city office building and think, wow, look at all the restaurants around the city office building, because what a draw for economic development it is. And so I'm just not sure that that's the right thing for the city center in terms of economic development. However, I could be wrong about that, and would certainly like to see more information. I likewise would also like to see a breakdown on the costs together that wouldn't involve, I guess your option, Alan, that you showed, the city office building off to the side over by the police station, or even if it were kind of around the corner in that parking lot there or something like that. I still like the idea personally of that area being kind of the city. Police station is already there, library there, at a city office building seems to make sense. So I haven't seen the plan that I like yet. That looks really good, but I also would like to see more cost study on whether the building is metal building construction or whatever construction. I feel like we do need to do something soon on our city office building for the basic reason that was stated, which is we can keep getting quotes. And if we cross our fingers and hope the price goes down, that's not going to happen. And so all we're doing is setting ourselves up for a bigger bill later. And we know we need to do this project. The existing offices, city office is just, it's just not adequate. We need to update that. And so my feeling is those projects do need to be done probably concurrently and as soon as we can get them done, because I I don't see where in the future construction costs are going to go down. So there's some thoughts.
Bruce, those are good thoughts. Just one thing to step in. I don't want to push the council too hard in one particular direction. If we decide to build a city office right now today, we would have to find somewhere in the budget that we would cut back out of the general fund to be able to pay back a general fund bond. And I don't know where that money would come from if we decided to start building the city, a brand new city office today. We may see economic growth. We're working economic development, as you guys know, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we'd have some things that could help those resources to appear. If the two options cost the same, to build a new city office and expand the old library versus building a new facility for the library and renovating for the city office, I would choose the new facility for the library and renovate the city office, because the revenue stream is there or very close to there, but in the form of money that the endowment in the Friends of the North Logan Library has, that could pay much of, if not all of the costs on a $6 million loan. And we have a $3 million gift lined up. And so we have plans for financing for $9 million if we're building a new facility. If we're not building a new facility, we still have the $3 million gift to pay for the library renovation, but we're on our own for finding the funds for the city office. Now, if a new facility plus renovation costs $13 million and just an expansion, just a new city office plus the expansion is covered by the $3 million donation, and a new city office costs $3 million, then that's a more difficult decision because it's a much cheaper option to build the city office, but we still have a financing issue. So just a quick thought there.
Sorry, David, could you explain that $9 million? I didn't quite follow. Maybe I wasn't paying well attention. So I know we got the $3 million donation.
Right.
How did we come up with
the plan would be to approach the CIB for a loan to support a new facility. Now, we could approach the CIB for a loan of up to $6 million, and it can be spread out over up to 30 years, whereas conventional lenders only go about 15 or 20 with municipalities. We could apply for that loan either for a new library facility or for a new city office facility. And so it's an existing stream of funding that we could seek either way. However, we can use funds from the Thorne Endowment to help pay the $6 million back if it's for the library. We cannot use those resources, obviously, to pay for a city office. So there's a revenue stream that can support paying back the loan to the CIB if we're building a new library. That revenue stream is not present for us. We would have to find some other way to pay the bond back if we were bonding for a city office.
Yeah,
Maybe
just
a
one-
couple comments, and I didn't write these down, so they might seem a little scattered, and I apologize in advance. But listening to this conversation, there are not often opportunities where where we have this chance to do something like this, especially with the financial situation we are in, and the details you just outlined, Mayor. I think one thing for me is, as I looked at that area a few years ago, it was hard to envision anything in that city center. Just a big field. My company I worked for owned, the south end of that. And it just wasn't really easy to visualize something there that would be a big benefit to the community long-term. But with the growth that's happened there, spurred on by the high school, I would hate to just discount that because we might be a little nervous. And I don't want to, discount the costs that are associated and how that might affect our community. But at the same time, the opportunity to put something there that's going to drive a lot of our residents and other residents of the county to that area, I think is significant, especially when you think about it long term. So it's easy to get tied up in the cost in the short term but I think you think 10, 15, 20 years out, we want the city to be marketable. We're going after economic development. We need to invest in ourselves as well. And I think this is a golden opportunity. And there is more work that needs to be done around the financial aspects of it without question, but there's probably some benefits that we're not considering that would be, big benefits long-term for what we could do there, rather than just adding on to what's already existing, in my opinion. I told you those were scattered thoughts, but.
That's some helpful feedback. Thank you, Buzzy.
One quick comment on that, just to reiterate what the mayor said, the option to do the library expansion is very appealing from the aspect that we could start it now. That's the shovel ready aspect. We could go there and do that, get some designs, start on this in the next 2 months. The only thing that I worry about that is the need for a new office. I can't think of a way, there isn't a lending method or anything else other than going and asking the taxpayers to pay for that new city office at that point. The reason being is, like the mayor said, there's mechanisms to pay for the library and to pay off a bond for a library. Keep in mind, we raised property taxes this year. The two departments that went up slightly in cost were fire and police. Every other department went down or stayed flat. We cut everywhere we could, and we still had to increase property taxes, and we were still $175,000 short of balancing in the general fund. So if you're talking about paying off a bond payment, we're $175,000 short of making of covering our general fund obligations, let alone needing $200,000 to $300,000 a year to pay off a bond of $3 to $4 million. I can't come up with the idea of where that money comes from. However, if we're content with our city office where it's at right now, we can do the library option. We can just expand the existing library and run with that. And like the mayor said, the other option is just a lot bigger thing to bite off and chew, but there are funding methods for it. So like I said, they both have their pluses and minuses, but Bruce brought up the good point. This is a brief discussion to kind of get some feedback as to direction we kind of want to go. And we've got some good feedback right now of getting costs, of pinning things down, and maybe exploring a few other options right now as far as the shell is concerned and using affordable building costs, and probably steering away from Children's Museum completely, other than just small components is what I'm hearing. But again, just if you have some further guidance, we can take that, we can move that forward, but probably coming back to the next few weeks, we do need to move forward on this.
Maybe I'll just throw one other comment out if I can. I have leaned towards moving it to the city center, just although personally for me it's more convenient where it is, but it seems like I've kind of leaned that way. I could be persuaded other ways, but I've leaned a little towards that and thought it would be nice to use the existing library as the city offices. And I agree, some of the funding makes that possible. I guess I just see the library as probably a little bit smaller than I think what we've looked at. And so I'll try to stay out of it, but I mean, I'll try not to give more comments, but that's kind of my thinking on it.
Thanks, Brad. That's helpful. I think something that Alan and I could maybe do here is see if we can get some back of the napkin drawings and some cost estimates for a couple of different scenarios, for a renovation scenario, or excuse me, new city office library renovation scenario, and a plan for what funding would look like, and a new library facility and old library becomes city office scenario, with branch A of that plan being no children's museum, and branch B being with a modest children's museum, and then see which of those options we can bring those back, get some feedback from you guys in a month or two, and then move forward from there. Does that sound like a reasonable plan? Okay, we'll take the thumbs ups and go with that as our acknowledgement of that being good. Anything else on this item? Okay. Then next up is a little bit of discussion of COVID and CARES Act. I don't have anything on this. Alan, do you have anything on this?
Just one quick update on, I'll be very brief, CARES Act funding. Our third tranche of funding we did receive, which is $290,000. We have about $250,000 left. Tomorrow I'll receive a survey and an email to file a report with the state financing department regarding our fund usage. If we don't have a clear plan for how we're going to use the remaining funds, the state wants the funds back. And so by tomorrow, we'll provide them with a clear plan of how we're going to use the remaining funds. And we do have a very clear plan. There's several options for the funds, from several upgrades and things that we can use to testing and things of that nature. And so we do have a clear plan, but I just wanted to bring everyone up to date on that. And those funds will have to be spent by the end of December. And then at that point, if there are future things that will come out, it'll just depend on Congress at that point, and we'll wait and see. But that's how we intend to use the funds for this remaining month. If you need specifics, get with me. I'll submit that plan probably tomorrow, just so that we are able to utilize those funds for this remaining month, and hopefully do a lot of testing and other things, and buy our supplies that we've been supplying to get us through the end of the year, when hopefully a vaccine starts coming out, at least for those who are high risk. So that's my only update right now. There's a few other things, but we'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay. Any questions on CARES Act and COVID stuff from the council? Okay. In that case, we'll go to reports, and we'll just kind of go in order that I see you guys on my screen, and hopefully you don't move around too much. Jordan, anything to report out on your side?
Just kind of quick update on 3100 North. We are getting some pavement down, getting it where the goal is to have that paved up to 1450, up to the last residence. We'll continue to work on that tomorrow and through to Friday, but we are planning right now to have that hard closed between that last house, the Reeder home, 1475 and 1600 East through the winter. We were not able to get that up to grade with the utilities in the way and get that finalized as we had planned. But with that pavement in there now, you can go drive it up to 1400, and it's made a drastic difference, and I think it'll work out really well through the winter.
Cool. Thanks. Excellent work from you guys on being able to make that work out, even though the weather tried to stop us from finishing up, or at least getting to a good stopping point. So thanks for your work on that, Jordan. Scott, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Bruce. Okay, sorry, I was looking at Bruce without a picture rather than Bruce with a picture. I think that was a no. Marie, do you have anything for us? Chief Black?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
Chief Black?
Good evening. Just a few things. We had 2 officers that received letters of recognition in the last couple of weeks. Usually when police are blasted all over the social media, it's not for good things, but we received a picture with Officer Bourne on it, who had stopped and was filling a gal's car up that had run out of fuel. And so he was filling it up with a gas can, and somebody snapped a picture and put it out there and made the comment, "Back the blue." And so, like I say, usually it's not the good stuff that we're blasted on social media for, but that was, and so that was that was really appreciated. We were able to track down the person that posted it, and they identified what time of day and those things. That's how we were able to tell which officer it was. The other one was a very rare occasion where somebody who was scammed out of about $3,000, we were able to recover that money for the victim. It was a local resident who had been one of those secondary victims, if you will, but our officer, Bearden, had followed through on that case and was able to recover that $3,000 and get it back to the victim, who lives in another state. So that was something that they were recognized for in the last couple weeks. We've submitted multiple grant proposals, and we're waiting for word back as to whether or not we will receive any of that money that we've put in for different things. Some of it's equipment, some of it's for payroll for a couple positions that we have. And so again, we won't probably hear back until beginning of the year, I think, on those, if I remember correctly, but we have submitted for multiple grants there. Other than that, it's just been busy around there at the office. We do have one out with COVID right now, and we're hoping he gets feeling better soon and can get back to work. So anyways, any questions from any of the council for the police?
Okay, thanks, Chief Black. Spencer, do you have anything for us?
Nope, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Craig?
Nope, nothing new.
Okay, Bruce again? Okay, Brad?
I don't have anything.
Did Buzzy already leave? Buzzy, how did I miss you? There you
No,
are.
I'm here and I don't have anything further.
Okay, Alan, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything. Just thanks to everyone for attending the meeting in this fashion. And I'll try to keep the agendas brief if we do have these types of meetings. They last a little bit longer because of the delays in discussion. So we've learned to keep these brief, and I'll not go on any further so that we can keep the meeting brief.
Okay, Craig, did I give you a shot to weigh in? You're good. All right, thank you. I just have a couple, one or two things. So one is, Alan, last meeting, we all kind of said if we can make it work with one meeting in December, that we would prefer to do that, go 3 weeks from now, and then just meet on the 9th and have the 9th be our only meeting of December. In terms of what's shaping up for the agenda, are we going to be okay to just do a single December meeting?
Yes, it appears that way. It would be a little bit lengthier than this meeting, but it would still probably just be one meeting as far as the number of agenda items that are lining up right now.
Okay, you guys comfortable with one meeting on the 9th that's a little longer rather than two? Seeing lots of head nods, that's what our plan will be. So we can cancel our plans for city council meeting on the 2nd and the 16th. And Scott, Marie, as you guys work on noticing and agendas, please make plans in that way.
I vote for 2 meetings.
You just can't go 2 weeks without spending time with us, right, UB? The one other thing, just a quick thing I wanted to run past you guys is there's a new initiative out just recently, the Utah Healthy Community recognition. Basically, there's a group that's partnering with the League of Cities and Towns to encourage cities to adopt health promoting lifestyles and aspects. There are 4 areas of being a healthy community. One is you need to have a community coalition engaged in discussions about health, a committee, collaboration between health engagement entities, active living, access to healthy food, and mental health. And as near as I can tell, we actually already meet the standards for 4 out of the 5 areas for being a healthy community, which is good. The one thing we don't have is a community coalition. And If the council, we don't need to do this by motion at this point in time. It only asks for an application from the mayor. But I would, since we're already doing most of these things, I would love to have North Logan get the recognition that comes with having this designation as a Utah Healthy Community. But before I go off and do that, I just wanted to get a nod from you all. Make sure you're healthy. There's no cost to it, just recognition of what we're doing. So looks like thumbs up there. Alan and Spencer, we may look for a little bit of help from you on this because there's some planning components to some of this as well. I'll forward you guys the detail and see if we can figure out the best way to get that application process rolling. That's all I have, and would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned. Depending on where governor's orders go, we'll either be back in person or virtual on December 9th. Have a good night, guys.